Okay, we are live. Sorry about that, you guys.
Welcome to the Pistons Talk Podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Lance Caprosi. Follow me on Twitter at Lance Caprosi. My co-host is Anthony. You already know him. You can follow him on Twitter and all social media platforms at Pistons Talk. He started the brand. I just hitched myself to the wagon. Anyway, let's get this started. Before we jumped on here, me and Anthony always have like a prep sheet. We know exactly what we're going to be talking about. But I don't know if the people watching this have heard this news about Jaren Jackson Jr. and the Memphis Grizzlies, how the stats keeper are basically bumping his stats up at home. And I believe some of the Vegas sports books have actually taken down the defensive player of the year, so you can't bet on it right now as they try to figure all this out. I don't know how much it will impact it, but I just want to share this. I lost fantasy basketball last week by one category. The category happened to be blocks. Guess who my opponent had on their team? Jaren Jackson Jr. And he had 17 blocks, I believe, in like 3 or 4 games that week. And I think 2 or 3 of them were at home. So I don't know. Take with what you want. Take that information. Do what you want with it. You can go on Reddit. There's this crazy, great post that has just highlighted everything. And apparently the NBA has taken notice. It's like this huge thing. It's pretty incredible. And I was telling Anthony, there was this stats keeper named Alex. He works with the Navy now, but he was a stats keeper for the Vancouver Grizzlies in the 90s. In this article, I've posted it multiple times on Twitter, might post it again, who knows? And he talks about how basically working as a stats keeper, you just kind of pad the stats when you're at home. He did it for Sharif Abdul-Rahim, but one time he got a little crazy in 97, 98, his final season working with the Grizzlies, and just thought, screw it. Let me just pump up Nick Van Exel's stats numbers when the Lakers came into town. So Nick Van Exel's career high in assist is 23, and he got it against the Vancouver Grizzlies. And this guy, Alex, openly admits that he was just driving his assist numbers up during the game just to see if anybody would notice. And when they did notice, they said, hey, good job. Vancouver is on TV on SportsCenter with the highlights. So take what you want with that information. Stats keepers, it's a wild life. And who knows if any of the stats are even true that we look at anymore, knowing this information.
Yeah, that's wild that a stats keeper would do that. I don't think the Pistons would do that. I know they have a pretty good stats keeper, a statistician. I don't think he would tell you that Bojan was shooting 50% from 3 when he wasn't.
I actually looked back at Ben Wallace's numbers, and I was trying to see how many double-digit block games he had in versus like Detroit versus at home versus away. They were pretty even. He was a great defensive player, whether he was at home or away. So there was none of that going on in Detroit.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I didn't even know that was like going on, that Memphis was doing that. But that's hilarious that you can't vote for him, or place a bet, I should say, for a defensive player of the year. But let's get to some Pistons topics, man. I know some people are like, dude, well, I thought this was a Pistons podcast. You're talking about Memphis and the Vancouver Grizzlies, which some kids, if you didn't know, Memphis actually used to be in Canada.
Yep. And Steve Francis didn't want to play there because he thought they took too much money. But anyways, yeah, let's get into some Pistons talk. But I feel like we had to share that because it was huge news. Let's rank these moves by Troy Weaver. So I picked out five of them that I thought were the biggest moves in the Troy Weaver era, and we're going to rank them. Trading for Duren, trading for Bojan, drafting for Isaiah Stewart, signing Jeremy Grant, and then trading and drafting Sadiq. I said trading and drafting because I believe the trades happened before they actually made the pick. So, but how would you rank those 5 moves by Troy Weaver?
Ooh. So I think draft night, I'll go into detail because I think sometimes people forget like what we traded for. So we could start with Isaiah Stewart first if you want. So we actually traded Christian Wood to Houston, for people that didn't know that. Christian Wood did not want to accept the mid-level exemption from the Pistons, which was like $10.5 million. He signed for like $13 million. So that's how we got Isaiah Stewart. It was a 3-team trade with Portland and Houston, and that's how we got Isaiah Stewart, which I thought was a pretty good trade. I don't think that's Troy's best trade, though. But it's a solid trade. I'd probably give that like a B.
But where would you rank it on these 5 that I listed?
Oh man, that's
Would it even be in your top five? Would it even make it for Troy
it,
Weaver moves?
honestly, man. He's made so many trades that like if I had to just like put it in a ranking, it's definitely top three
Okay.
or top four. I would say his best trade would probably be Bojan,
Ooh, okay.
just for the value that he got him at. You trade a guy in Saban Lee who spent a lot of time in the G League last year. He's finally getting his footing in the NBA now. He's actually back in Phoenix, which it's I'm happy for him. They actually waived him and then they re-signed him, so he's balling out in Phoenix. And you trade a bench piece in Kelly Olynyk, who I think we all know he's probably one of the best bench, 4 or 5s in the league. But you get a starter who's averaging 20 points a game that's flirting with the 50, 40, 90 season as the number one option on a rebuilding Detroit Pistons team. I think the Bojan trade to me would be up there. I think the Sadiq Bey trade for me also, I think I would rank it too,
Ooh,
because Luke Kennard wanted to get paid and the Pistons didn't want to pay him. Like, let's just be clear about that. They did not want to pay him. The fact that you got the best small forward in that 2020 draft class for trading Luke Kennard and I think 4 second-round picks, to me, I thought was just a home run trade. I still think the Sadiq Bey trade for me is probably one of his best trades he's ever made. But I would probably say Bojan would be number one, Sadiq would be number two. I put the Isaiah Stewart one number three, and the other ones would probably be between 4 and 5. But I just think the Bojan trade, for what it's worth, I thought it was a home run move, and I thought it was a really great trade.
so I have it a little differently. I have the Duran trade as number one, just because it also brought in Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel. But drafting, and I'm basing this on of kind of potential too. Like if Duran turns out to be one of the best defensive centers in the league, this is a no-brainer move. I had Bojan number two. No, actually, I had the signing of Jeremy Grant number two. And the reason I have the signing of Jeremy Grant number two, because I felt like once Jeremy Grant started playing, that move kind of restored faith in the Detroit Pistons organization among the fans. I could be wrong about that, but I thought that was a pretty important signing in the Troy Weaver era because he's a new GM. He was an assistant working for Oklahoma City, and we all knew it was going on over there. So we were all kind of happy that Troy Weaver's coming over, but he hadn't made any moves prior to this. So signing Jeremy Grant, I put that at number two just because I thought it was really important. Then the Bojan trade would be number three. Sadiq, this one was tough for me. I would say that's number four. Even though I'm not, if you were to make an argument for it to being 2 or 3, I'm not gonna argue with you because I thought it was a great draft as well. And then I put Isaiah Stewart. That's at the bottom of the list just because we see what Christian Wood is doing in Dallas. I'm not saying he would do the same things here in Detroit or if the teams would even have the same success, but seeing what C Wood is doing versus what Isaiah Stewart is doing, yeah, I mean, it kind of takes it down a little bit. Even though Isaiah Stewart is still very important to this core, I just thought, maybe you could have, Christian Wood, he's pretty much balling out in Dallas, though, right now. That's why the trading and drafting of Isaiah Stewart ranks a little lower for me right now.
Okay. So we actually forgot a trade, and I got to give a shout out to Ryan. If you guys are watching live on YouTube, Ryan had a trade in the comments that we didn't even touch, and that was FEMA Hilug for Hamidou Diallo and a second-round pick.
That's a great trade. And I never thought of anything with Hami just because we do have a topic opening this conversation about Diallo, but we can kind of talk about a little bit. I don't know. I mean, that is a good trade though, because Hami, man, he just provides so much, and Svi Mikhail is pretty much out on his way in the league. That is a good trade. But I mean, would you put that in the top 5 over any of these other ones?
I think it should at least get an honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Like even DJ mentioned, like a big reason why we got Stewart is because we took on Trevor Ariza's contract, which I completely forgot about. Like we've had a lot of veterans that we've kind of just eaten their cap. Like DeAndre Jordan's still on our books. Trevor Ariza, Dwayne Dedman. Zaire Smith. Like Troy Weaver did a lot of juggling with the cap space, but I mean some of the trades he's made, and like I think what a lot of Pistons fans forget is when he got here, he had no trade assets. The cap was maxed out to capacity, and he's done a really good job in 3 years of kind of just rebuilding this team and putting it in a position to be very aggressive this summer.
Yeah, and he's not really like a sucker GM where he gets pulled into some bad trades. Like it always seems like he's coming out on top, even if it seems like when the trade first happens, it doesn't really make that much sense. But it somehow just always works out for Troy Weaver. He knows something that we all don't.
Yeah.
Sure. I thought this next topic was kind of interesting. I forgot who posted it, so I apologize if you're watching this and say, "Hey, that was my thing." I try to give credit. But do you agree that the only players that should be kept over from this year's team are Cade, Jaden Ivey, and Duren?
I would say these are your building blocks. I would not say that these are the only players that need to be on your team next year. I would say Bojan needs to be on your team next year. Alec Burke needs to be on your team next year. Hamidou Diallo needs to be on your team next year. I think that there's building blocks, obviously, with those three because they're your young guys or your first-round draft picks. But there are some players on this team that I would like to bring back, and all those players that I mentioned, I think, have contributed, wins this season. They've contributed really good basketball, even though, we haven't won that many games. But I think Diallo, Bojan, and Alec Burks need to be in that conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I was kind of surprised that they left off Killian Hayes as well. They left off Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey. Like, I mean, we're not going to get into it right away, but those three also have had impacts while they've been in Detroit. So just to kind of use them as write-offs, basically, and say that you don't want them to be on this team next year and not giving an explanation. That was the hardest thing for me. But I disagree with whoever started this on Twitter. I think there's more than Cade, Ivey, and Duren that you need to keep from this roster. Like, I think Killian, like Anthony said, Bojan, Alec Burks, Hamidou Diallo definitely deserves a chance to be on this team next year. I mean, the spark he provides off the bench is just contagious. We saw it last night against the Houston Rockets. So, yeah, Hami definitely deserves to have a chance to be brought back on this team. Same with a handful of other guys. So, I don't know. I completely disagreed with the author of this topic, I should say, from Twitter. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've forgot people because I can't think of the whole roster off the top of my head. Like, I didn't even think of Killian. Like, there's some players on this roster that I want to keep. Like, I think the two vets that I've mentioned that I want to keep is Bojan and Alec Burks. Yep. Because I remember when we were doing a podcast, this summer, I told you, I said we got to get some impactful veterans.
Yep.
That can win. Like, we had veterans like Corey Joseph and Ronnie Magruder, but they didn't really impact winning. And those two actually impact winning, and they can kind of set a culture and kind of, set an example for the young guys. And I think those two, for me, even though we are getting closer to the trading deadline, those are two guys that I really want to keep.
Yeah, same. I do not. I mean, we're going to get into it again here in a second, but I do not like the noise coming out of some Pistons fans talking about, the only reason we're doing all of this is because Troy Weaver wants to make a move. And it's like, no, I don't think that's the only reason why we've seen some roster changes. But yeah, you were right. I mean, having those veterans that can play and teach the young guys and just help establish a culture is so important. And you have been preaching that on this podcast for months since we started it. And it's so true. Like, yeah, I mean, we had some veterans last year. I can't name them. And our team was garbage, just like it is this year. But that's because of injuries more this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just some of the vets, like, nothing against Ronnie Magruder. I think he's a great vet when you need, some scoring at the two guard. Nothing against Corey Joseph. I think he's a good vet. But, I mentioned Anthony Tolliver from a few seasons ago with the Detroit Pistons. And when he came, his energy was infectious and the team started winning basketball games. And I think Alec Burks and Bojan haven't had that same effect, but they've definitely impacted winning. And they're definitely vets that I think Troy and the Pistons would like to keep if they can.
Yeah, like Ronnie Magruder, I mean, great veteran, but he's an end of the bench piece. He's a spot starter when you want to keep the second unit intact when your starter is out. Like Ronnie Magruder, there's a role, and he's getting paid handsomely to do that role, and that is to sit at the end of the bench. Let's talk about another role player that we actually mentioned earlier on the podcast, and that is Hamidou Diallo, one of our favorites. Are we as fans undervaluing him, though? I mean, I don't want to walk that back because I definitely think there are two groups of Hami fans or
Mm-hmm.
Pistons fans, really. There are some that just do not see the value of a high energy role player that can provide a spark. And then there are some guys that do see it, but that minority of people is so much quieter than the other group that is so much louder. So what are your thoughts? Do you think fans are undervaluing Hamidou Diallo?
I do, and I can understand both arguments for people that love Hamidou Diallo. They love the energy. They love what he brings off the bench. And I can also understand where other fans like the guy can't shoot.
Yep.
He's out of control. Like some games he has it, some games he doesn't. I think as of late, Hamidou Diallo has finally figured it out. And sometimes it takes a lot of time for these players, getting drafted to finally figure it out. I think he's finally carved a niche in the league. I think he's finally figured out, hey, I have to be the energy guy. I have to be the guy that gets everyone going off the bench. And I think he's done that so flawlessly for the Detroit Pistons. And I was under the belief that Dwayne Casey had him in the doghouse because Kevin Knox was playing better. And he was. I mean, before, I think like in November, he wasn't playing that well. Like, December, January, he's been phenomenal. He's been a completely different player. He's been one of the better defenders. He's the best cutter on this team. And it seems like every night we're getting a highlight dunk out of Hamidou Diallo. I'm really impressed with him, and I hope the Pistons do keep him long term.
Yeah, I love what he's doing off the bench. Like, it seems like he's almost playing like a big man, like on, because he's going against the second unit. They typically don't have like a ton of size at those positions. You kind of see more like tweeners, I guess, coming off the bench, and Ami fits that role. So I love him in that. I mean, when he gets into that dunker spot and he just goes up and over some people, it is just so exciting, just gets me going. And it's just, yeah, he is finding it. Like, he's starting to find out, like, I can make an impact on defense. Like, I don't have to play 30, 40 minutes a night. I can come in here and play anywhere from like 18 to 24 and have a role and have an impact on this team. And I think you're right. I think he is really starting to figure out. It just seems like there's something clicked in him where he's letting the game come to him a little bit more. And I don't know, maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, but doesn't it seem like he's not forcing things as much offensively, or is he still forcing things?
I think the game has slowed down for him a little bit too. Like last season, like I called him the Tasmanian Devil because it's just like one speed. But I think he's kind of figured it out, like where he can still, be explosive and be fast. But I think he's figured out like how to slow down and try to manipulate the defense and be patient and wait to cut, wait to push it in transition, playing the passing lanes, playing great defense. So I think he's kind of finally figured it out and just, carved a niche on this Detroit Pistons team. And I absolutely love that he did, because we need energy. We need cutters. We need people that actually move without the ball. We really don't have that outside of him on this roster.
And we really need like that dog off the bench, a guy that's not going to back down from anybody. Like when Jayshawn Tate, kind of rocked him yesterday, he didn't back down. When he got into it with Matthews and got that technical, he went right back at. I mean, I love Hamidou Diallo, man. This dude is just like, the Pistons have always found these kind of like high energy role guys like Lindsey Hunter, Mike James, Jerome Williams, Dennis Rodman, Hamidou Diallo. Like, they always seem to find one of these guys that can make an impact with their energy and just defense and hustle. And I hope Hami's here in Detroit for a long time. I really do. I think there's so much value for a guy like that. And plus, I mean, it's starting to seem like he's pretty versatile defensively. I'm liking that from him. Like, I love what I'm seeing from Hamidou Diallo. So I hope he's here in Detroit, man. I can't say enough about him.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we're talking about like his pro comp, and like people last week were saying he reminds them of Darvin Ham.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of similarities there. Like he just named off tons of Pistons greats that were bench players that helped their team off the bench win games, and I think you could put him in that very few selection of great Piston bench players.
Yep, I think so too, and I think he's just going to keep climbing that Mount Rushmore of high energy bench players in Detroit. I really do. Let's talk about another trade that happened in the NBA. Okay. Rui Hachimura was traded for practically nothing. Should the Pistons have made an offer? Some fans think they shouldn't.
honestly, when I told you when you got traded, and you're like, dude, what? Really? I was like, yeah, he got traded for Kendrick Nunn and a couple of second round. I think it was 4 second round picks,
Jeez.
if I do remember correctly. Um, I don't think the Pistons missed out on Rui. I don't. I think if you look at guys that are playing the backup four, I think it's Sadiq Bey right now playing off the bench, and then you kind of got Isaiah Stewart in there too as of late. I think Rui Hachimura is a good player, but I think the Lakers actually overpaid for him.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know what the Lakers are trying to do. Like, I see all these things where like, is Rui the missing piece? I don't think he is. I mean, the Washington Wizards kind of sucked. Like when he was there,
Yeah.
I don't know how much he has of an impact, but I don't think the Pistons should have made an offer. I've seen some fans say that they should have, and they were disappointed in Troy Weaver. I mean, I don't know where he fits. Like, whose role do you want him to take? Do you want him to did you want him to take Sadiq Beys? Did you want him to take Isaiah Livers? Did you want him to take Bojans? What did you want from Rui Hachimura that you're not getting from those three guys?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
You know?
Marvin Bagley too. Like when he comes back, do you want him to take Marvin Bagley's spot? And you paid him $12 million a year. Like, I think Pistons fans, when they see a trade, especially that was the kind of the first domino to kind of like fall before the trading deadline. Probably this week and next week is going to be absolutely crazy with rumors and reports, and we'll be covering it for sure. But I mean, it. I think we just have to pump the brakes,
I
right?
got, yeah, I think so too. But I got one question for you. Do you think this pulls the Lakers out of the Bojan sweepstakes?
No, because they could go out and offer you Rui.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Could they trade him like that right away?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, okay. I didn't
the
know that.
Hawks did it with Rashid. He played one game and then he was a Detroit Piston.
This is very true. This is very true. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of thinking like Rui might pull the Lakers out of it because I think the move for Rui isn't just for this season. I think it's for the future. And I think it was Michael Scotto. I hope I'm not. I think I'm saying his name right from Hoops Hype, and he kind of put this in my head where he thinks a trade from the Lakers, like one of their bigger stars, might be happening, and then the Lakers are basically going to try to blow it up. Not trying to turn this into a Lakers talk podcast, but they've been rumored to make a trade with the Detroit Pistons, and I think this Rui trade. I don't think they're going to be trying to make a trade for Bojan this season because I think that this team makes them a little younger, and they're not going to try to compete.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Shams Karania this week on FanDuel TV saying like the conversation was Patrick Beverly because the salaries match, and possibly a protected first round pick, and maybe you throw Lonnie Walker in there. Like, if I'm a Pistons fan, unless you're unprotecting that first round pick, I'm not even interested because that first round pick is in 2027. We're in 2023, so we're gonna have to wait a few years to even see what that draft pick could turn into. We don't know if the Lakers are going to completely suck or they could, be competing for playoffs. So that pick could be anywhere from a top 5 pick to 30. You don't know. You
Yeah.
don't have a crystal ball. So I think if Boyan does get traded, it's not going to be in the Western Conference. I think it would be in the Eastern Conference. That's just my personal opinion. I think a lot of Eastern Conference teams that do have interest in him have more to offer than the Lakers do.
Interesting. So did that Patrick Beverly trade, did that come out before the Rui trade or after?
That was reported about 2 weeks ago
Okay.
that the Lakers had offered Patrick Beverly um, and I think a protected first round pick for Bojan, and the Pistons were interested in that.
I don't want Patrick Beverly in Detroit. Not after he just pulled that camera out. I
Dude,
thought,
that was funny as hell.
dude, it was funny, but I mean, didn't you just think you were kind of watching the WWE for a second?
Reminded me of Blake when he pulled out the iPad with the ref, but the ref didn't give him a tech.
Dude, I forgot about that. But it was just the whole thing, like LeBron throwing the tantrum on the floor, then Patrick Beverly. I don't know where he got that camera from, but I just saw it. I'm like, dude, what am I watching right now?
I think he took it from a photographer under the basket real quick to show the ref, and then the ref gave him a tech, and he was right, by the way. But still, it's just like, man, that's just funny. But to your point, no, I wouldn't want Patrick Beverly
Not
on
any.
the Detroit Pistons, even though he kind of fits like that Detroit Piston mold. Um, that's just no, I'm good. Ryan's got another like funny comment. Shout out to Ryan. He's like, "What about Harden coming on the court to play defense?" I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I didn't see that one.
So I don't even know what James Harden was trying to do. So he goes. He should have been ejected, by the way, because as soon as you step on the court, you should be ejected. I don't know if he did or not, but he goes on the court and like kind of gets hit in the head with like a basketball. It's just like, dude, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh, dude. I love the NBA and just the way it's going. Oh my gosh. It's just crazy. All right, we got some news. Some trade news, some rumors. The Detroit Pistons are one of 5 teams interested in trading for Harris Levert. I'm surprised. Aren't you? I mean, we've been linked to him before in the past, but with everything the Pistons have on this team, would it make sense for them to trade for Harris Levert?
I mean, it makes sense if they're still interested. I mean, if we're talking about a trade package, you're proud because the Cavs want to compete for the playoffs. They want to have a deep playoff run because they have a very good team. I think if you're looking at a trade package for people watching, I think you're talking Alec Burks because I think that's what would kind of move the needle. Now, Levert is on the last year of his contract, so it would definitely be a rental. But if the Pistons are really interested in Levert and they think that they're going to have some major competition, they'll probably make this trade. But if not, he's a free agent. You can get him this summer.
I mean, the only reason really you make this trade is to get the money off the books, right? To make a bigger play for someone in the offseason. I don't think Harris Levert, if they were traded, he'd be a part of the future though, right?
I mean, he could be your 2 guard of the future if you wanted him to be, or it could be your 3 because he's kind of interchangeable between the 2 and the 3. You also have to take into account the people that went to the University of Michigan that are on the staff.
This is true.
From front office people that, not a lot of people know about to John Beilein. And I mean, John Beilein has a very good relationship with all his former players. I mean, your boy Isaiah Livers, we drafted him. He went to Michigan.
Yep.
He coached Harris Levert. I mean, there is, I think this is a rumor that I would kind of be afraid of if I was a Piston fan, because I think it's more than a rumor. I think there is some truth to it. I think there's definitely some interest from the Piston side on it. It's not the first time I've heard it either. It's probably like the 5th time I've heard it over the last year.
Yeah, I just don't want this. Like a couple seasons ago, I wanted Harris Levert in Detroit. Like I thought he was a nice building block. I thought he was a decent player. I thought there was something more to his game than there. The thing that scares me the most about Harris Levert, very talented player, just he's always injured though. Like that's the biggest problem. And yeah. I mean, I would rather have Alec Burke on my team. I would rather go with him. I think he's a better shooter. I think he's better at getting to the free throw line. He's just a better vet. And it seems like he's available. Early on, Alec Burke wasn't available. He dealt with some injuries early on in his career. But as of recently, like he's been a pretty healthy guy. So, I mean, I would hope the Pistons pass on Harris Levert. It's just he's just injury prone. I don't need him. I don't know. I think like Alex Burke just kind of fits into the mold of what they're doing too. He can, I just think Harris Levert, it might sound stupid for me to say this, but I think he just kind of needs the ball in his hands a little bit more than Alec Burke does. Alex Burke can play off the ball a little bit better because he is a better shooter. So I would rather have that than Harris Levert.
Yeah, I just fear with all the the Michigan ties that they might pull the trigger on it, but hopefully they don't. Like I said, I've kind of got a lot of flack for it for like shooting guard talk, and I know Jaden Ivey does play shooting guard, and I know he's a player that kind of plays in between that combo guard, but I think ultimately the Pistons want to use him as a shooting guard.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a world where you could have Jaden Ivey and Harris Levert on the same court together. You could. I mean, you could literally have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Harris Levert, Bojan, and Duran. Like, there's a world where that works, but there's also a world where maybe the Pistons want to keep an Alec Burks on this team because they see more value of him being on the bench and being one of the best bench scorers in the NBA. But my only thing is I just kind of fear like the Michigan ties with him. Like if he didn't go to Michigan, then I wouldn't be worried about it. But that's my only fear is just the relationship that he does have with Beilein and other guys that do work in the front office that went to the University of Michigan that make front office decisions.
It's so important to network, guys. It's so important. That's how you get jobs. It's who you know. Doesn't matter how good you are. It's who you know. Harris Levert and Michigan players proving it with their connection to Beeline.
For sure.
The second piece of news is a little bit more more interesting, and that is the Detroit Pistons and the Charlotte Hornets are interested in trading for Io DeSumo. I'm pretty sure I just butchered his last name.
Yeah.
Anyways, Big Ten. I mean, he was a great guard in the Big Ten for Illinois. So I think he was a second round pick, might have been undrafted. I don't remember too much about the Bulls, but he's been a good guard. Again, though, man, Detroit Pistons, man, it's just kind of a little late to be making these trades for these younger players because they have Cade, they have Ivy, they have Killian, they have Hami, they have, Alec Burks. I don't know. Would you want the Pistons to trade one of their younger players, though, for AO?
I think he's a very good defender. And how you pronounce his last name is DeSumo.
DeSumo, okay.
I think he's a good defender. I do remember during Cade's rookie year, he was giving Cade some fits.
Yep.
Like, you guys can go watch the tape on that. I mean, really good defender. I just think why the Pistons have interest in him is they could probably get him on a very, cheap trade. Like, you probably wouldn't have to give up a whole lot to get him. Chicago is a team where I don't really know if they're going to try to go all in with Zach LaVine and those guys, or they're going to blow it up. I just don't know. Because they were a team, a year ago where they were a top Eastern Conference playoff team, and a lot of people thought that they were going to, run the East. But Lonzo Ball's knee injury happened, and he's not going to play this season probably. And, they got to make some tough decisions. And I think AO could be a guy where he could go to Charlotte or he could go to Detroit. There's a lot of teams that could use his versatility defensively. But if I'm the Pistons, I would probably pass just because what you said, you have so many guards. You have Cade, you have Killian, you have Hamidou, you have Jaden Ivey. Where are you going to put him?
Yeah, if Killian hadn't been playing the way he's been playing these last couple of months, I would say, yeah, bring AO in. But I mean, Killian's been playing well. Jaden Ivey's had his moments. We already all know about that. That's well documented. Alec Burks has been playing good. We're pretty much covered in the backcourt. And then once Cade comes back, that's 4 guys, if they don't make any trades this at the deadline or in the offseason, that are going to get big minutes in the backcourt. So I don't know. It just kind of feel bringing in like AO. It just seems like it'd be redundant. He has great size, though, for the guard position. I mean, his rookie year, he shot 38% from 3 on 2 attempts. That was great. He was shooting 60% on 2-point field goals. Just bringing it defensively, like you said, pretty decent rebounder. Not a great scorer, but I mean, he's just a steady point guard. And that's what you want from a bench piece, like a role player. And he can start for you if you need him. But again, the Pistons are young, and I just feel like keeping continuity between the young players and some of the veterans is more important than going out and finding a young player that could, that has shown a little promise.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking around the league, I think he makes a lot of sense for the Clippers.
Yeah.
Honestly, because they need more guard help, even though they do have Reggie Jackson and John Wall. They're looking to upgrade the point guard position. This kid can play both point guard and shooting guard. He's very talented. I remember, watching tape on him. I thought he was really great at Illinois. He's just got that dog in him. And I just think if you're a team that trades for him, you're getting a guy that, he could be a diamond in the rough if you do develop him the right way. He's already got the defensive game. And if he can, put together an offensive game and kind of be that combo guard that you're looking for, I think you can get a steal in DeSumo. I just don't think the Pistons are in a position to trade for another guard because it's like, where are the minutes going to come from? That would be my question.
Yeah, I just don't. And he, again, very good player, but Killian's, I think, is more talented than him. I think Ivy's more talented than him, and I think Cade is more talented than him. And you have Alex Burks already. So yeah, AO, it's a pass for me. It's a painful pass though, because he is a talented player. And I mean, at any other point in Pistons history, I would love to see him in a Detroit Pistons uniform. Unfortunately, we got some young pieces that are promising. So see you, AO, wherever the grass is greener. Hope it works out for you. We don't have too much in injuries. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just dude, it's a merry-go-round pretty much. Marvin Bagley's still out. Do we have any news on him? Is he coming back anytime soon that you know of, or are they keeping kind of quiet on that?
You'll probably see him late February, early March at the latest.
Jeez.
He did start doing some like shooting drills, but not with his injured hand. This is offhand, like very limited practice, nothing crazy. So, like I said, he's just got to wait for those metacarpals to heal, and we should probably have an update within the next 2 weeks or so.
Do you think like once his contract is up, the Pistons will just let him walk, or do you think they try to just based on the injury? The talent is there, but because of the injury history.
Yeah, I think they're kind of regretting the contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's only what for this year, the next year. He didn't sign for a lot more than 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Okay.
And there's no like Troy Weaver loopholes where the second year is non-guaranteed. This is a full 3-year contract, and I think you would have a very hard time trading it right now.
Yeah, I know. I can't see it. He would just have to play. He'd have to go on a nice little run, have his Linsanity moment to really get that value back up. It just sucks for Marvin Bagley, man. Yeah. I mean, it found like he was finding his niche in the NBA finally. Dude, off the bench, like, just, man, it's sad. I don't know, Marvin Bagley, man. I was so distracted by his chain, though, last night when he was sitting on the bench. Did you see that thing around his neck?
Yeah, I mean, he's always dripped out on the bench. You can always count on Marvin Bagley to bring the chains when he's injured.
I was surprised. That thing looked heavy, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna hurt your neck, bro. Jeez.
Did you see the King shit this week?
I did not. What was going on with that?
So I'm scrolling on Twitter, and this Kings account on Twitter, I don't remember what his at was, but they were saying how Trey Lyles is better than Marvin Bagley, and they stole the trade, basically saying how I can't believe the Pistons gave up Trey Lyles for Marvin Bagley.
What has Trey Lyles been doing in freaking Sacramento?
I don't know, 7 points a game on league average shooting from 3.
Oh, okay.
Those Kings fans, man, they are so salty. I think every time they see Bagley, and they just think of Luka Doncic. Like, I don't even think it's a Bagley thing. I think it's just they passed on Luka, and they drafted this century's Darko Milicic.
Dude, man, I think Marvin Bagley's a little bit better.
No, he's not that bad, but you kind of get the point. I mean,
yeah.
You could look at the Luka draft and Marvin Bagley and all those guys, and like they're multiple-time All-Stars and all this stuff, and he hasn't really lived up to the potential, and he's always injured. So I mean, it's similar to Darko.
Did you hear that thing about what was his name? Oh, Kwame Brown saying he has a better life than LeBron James because he can like basically still go do things without the public knowing him. Like, man, where am I going with this? Yeah, I don't know. What would you rather have? Would you rather have like the greatness of LeBron, but you lose your anonymity, or would you rather just have the money like Kwame Brown, but you can still go grocery shopping without anybody hounding you?
Oh, Kwame Brown all day. I'm a low-key guy.
But don't you think being everywhere, anytime someone recognizes you, they just scream out bust? Don't you think that would drive you crazy?
Nah.
As you just light a cigar with $1 bill.
No, I mean, like, there's a video a while ago. I saw, like, Greg Oden, like, walking down the street. Or it was, like, a video of Greg Oden walking down the street. And this old lady's like, do you play basketball? And he's like, oh, I used to.
Do you think, though, like, if you were Marvin Bagley, you would have rather – I don't know. I think being drafted second in that draft class would just get so nauseating for me. Like, always hearing about how I'm not better than Luka, how the Kings made a mistake. Like, do you think you'd be able to, like, basically live Marvin Bagley's life knowing you were always hearing that from people? Because, like you were saying, like, the Kings fans are basically talking up Trey Lyles and how they get the better end of that deal. Don't you think that would get a little rough on you after a while?
No, I think you kind of just tune out the noise. You hear what you want to hear, really. I still think Marvin Bagley is a phenomenal talent. I think he has a hell of a post game. I think he's a great player. But like I said, we've talked about him more on the injury report this year than we've talked about him, having great games. And that's sad. That's sad to hear. I just want him to, put a season where he's actually playing 70-plus games.
Yep, I do. Jeez. Do you even think that's even going to happen? Do you think we'll ever see Marvin Bagley play 70 games in Detroit?
It could. I don't know, man. It's just they're such freak injuries. It's not like he got his ankle stepped on versus OKC in a preseason game. Like it got twisted wrong. He got his fingers jammed. Like they're just freak injuries. It's not because he's unhealthy or he doesn't take care of himself. They're just you know just freak injuries that he can't really control. So I feel for him. Hopefully he does recover soon and we can see him before the end of the season. But I don't know if he'll ever play 70+ games.
No, he hasn't.
I hope he does during this contract. He has to.
I would just love to see a 170-game season for Marvin Bagley. That is it. That's all I want to see.
Yeah.
I doubt we see it, though. He's never done it before. All right, let's get into some topics.
Okay.
This is a fun one for me because this has been, I don't know about you. I love being a fly on the wall on Twitter and just reading people's comments on this this change that Dwayne Casey's had, and that is to bring Killian Hayes off the bench. I personally love it. The last 2 games he's came off the bench. He's closed the game on Thursday. Before I ask you any questions, let me just share the numbers with Killian in his last 2 games. He's had 24 points, 5 rebounds, 10 assists, 4 steals, 9 of 20 from the field, 3 of 8 from 3-point, 3 of 5 from free throw, with 6 turnovers. Let me ask you the first question. Do you like this move to bring Killian Hayes off the bench?
I do. I know some fans on Twitter have been overreacting a lot. They're like, Ivy and Killian were just forming chemistry. Why are you separating them now?
Yep.
Like, what's the point? I don't really think there's a point with Dwayne Casey. I think Dwayne Casey just tries things out. I mean, after letting 150 points against the Bucks this past week, you should have expected a lineup change. I'm sorry, you can't give up 150 points, even to a team like Milwaukee. There was going to be a lineup change, and whether that's Sadiq off the bench, Killian off the bench, and Isaiah Stewart off the bench, it had to be done. And to your point, he's played really good off the bench, and he's finishing games. Doesn't matter whether you're starting or coming off the bench. If you're finishing the game, hey, I'd be happy. I'm sure Killian's happy with his playing time. And I think Jaden Ivey's kind of taken responsibility of kind of being that lead guard. I mean, that game that he had with, I can't remember what game it was, where he had like 12. I think it was the Brooklyn Nets game, if I do remember it correctly, where he had like 12 within the first like 5 minutes. And him and Duren really had a 2-man game like all night. Like he was looking for Duren, setting him up. I think a lot of Pistons fans are overanalyzing. They're like, well, they're not prioritizing Killian's development. They're prioritizing Jaden Ivey's development. I don't even think it's that. I just think Casey made a lineup change and it happened to work.
Yeah, and I think Killian Hayes being that lead guard in the second unit, which is something they have needed. Like, there's no Kojo right now, which, I mean, I'm sure a lot of Pistons fans are very thankful for. Do not even kid me and tell me you're not happy to see that. But Killian Hayes off the bench, where he still gets to be the lead guard, he still gets to have those responsibilities, and there's no pressure of him playing a different game alongside Cade and Jaden Ivey. Like, I mean, they were asking him to be a spot-up shooter with those guys. But now that, like we were talking about, the silver lining of Cade getting injured was we got to see the growth and the development of Killian Hayes as a lead guard, and he still gets to do that with the bench unit. I don't think that's wrong. There's going to be matchups and there's going to be games down the line where he's going to be closing games. So for people to whine and just cry and bitch basically about Killian Hayes coming off the bench because he's the quote unquote best player in Detroit right now, dude, you're fooling yourselves. Like, he's not going to start alongside Cade and Ivey next season. He is going to be the lead guard off the bench, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like we were just talking about with Hami. Everybody has to play a role for this thing to work in Detroit. Like, everybody has to. And if Killian Hayes wants to leave, which I don't think he will, just because he's going to the bench, fine, so be it. Find greener grass. I just don't think that's going to be happening because he got demoted to the bench. Killian Hayes has struggled with finding a place in the NBA, and he finally found one in Detroit. He's finally found a home. So I don't think he's going to be leaving. I think he's actually I think he's playing better coming off the bench. Like, it's the confidence is still there. Like, it didn't hurt him. It didn't change his game. He's still out there being confident, Killian. So I love the move. I love the move 100%. And I think it's just getting ready because this is going to be Killian's role going forward. I did like what James Edwards said, and I don't know if this is true. He said I think he said they're basically bringing Killian Hayes off the bench because they're lacking ball handlers right now, and they don't want Ivy and Killian to get into foul trouble at the same time because they're both bad foulers right now.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to kind of, separate them to make you don't want both of your, best ball handlers on the court together. Because, when they get tired, the second unit, I mean, most nights you see Corey Joseph when he is healthy. Sometimes you'll see Alec Burks kind of take on that lead, the guard role. But I think Killian is so versatile. You could either start him as your point guard or he could be the best, bench point guard in the league, in my opinion. I think you could easily average 8 assists a night on the bench if you, surround him with the proper shooting and, cutters. And I just think all these guys getting sent to the bench, I don't even think it's a demotion. I mean, Saddiq Bey had one of his best games against the Nets, and he doesn't even start. He comes off the bench. He had 25 points. I think he led the team in scoring that night when we did beat the Nets. So I think some people really they look at starting versus coming off the bench, and they think if you come off the bench, it's the worst thing ever. Like, you could be a bench player and still finish games. It doesn't really matter whether you're starting or finishing.
And I know the Pistons have lost. I mean, they won. They won against the Brooklyn Nets, but it seemed like for a week or, actually just basically the entire time Casey's been here, we have asked for changes. We've asked for him to shake things up. And when he finally shakes things up, people still complain about it. I get that Killian has played well, but he's still playing well even off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, all three of them. Killian's playing well. Saddiq's playing well. Isaiah Stewart, he's been eating off the bench. So Casey's just trying to, find, matches of what fits and, what buttons to push. And I think he's got it out of Saddiq Bey. It looks like he's found something in Killian Hayes, and Isaiah Stewart, the past couple of games has been playing well too. But like I said, I think where this stems from was the Bucks game. Again, you can't give up 50 points in the first quarter. You should have expected a lineup change as soon as you saw that.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think with Killian though, I get why you would want to start him for the rest of the year, but if you are planning on him being a part of this future, wouldn't it make sense to get him ready to be coming off the bench, because that's probably the role he will be playing next season? Because I don't think they play Cade at the 3. I don't think they're going to take the ball out of his hands. They brought him in to be the franchise. They're not going to ask him, just because Killian's playing well, they're not going to ask Cade to play off the ball because of that.
Yeah, I think that there's a reality where Killian could be your 2 guard next to Cade, and Ivy comes off the bench. There's a reality where you kind of run Cade and Ivy next to each other like he did this year, and bring Killian off the bench. Like I said, I think Killian's versatile. He could either be your lead guard or he could be your backup, point guard. I think there's a lot of value with him. So I'm not worried about Killian. I'm not worried about Isaiah Stewart. I'm not worried about Saddiq Bey. I think all of them can score whether they're coming off the bench or starting.
So let me just ask you one final question about Killian Hayes coming off the bench. What do you think is the more likely scenario next season? Starting Ivy, Killian, and Cade together, or starting Cade, Ivy, and having Killian come off the bench and that be the 3-headed monster?
It's hard for me to say because I don't know where we're going to land in the draft.
That's true.
I don't know if we're getting a top 5 pick or we're going to get screwed. I don't know.
well, let's say the Pistons draft Brandon Miller. Let's just say they go to 3 and they draft Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller's on this team now. Do you think the scenario is that Killian comes off the bench or he starts alongside Ivy and Cade and Brandon Miller?
I think he comes off the bench.
Okay. Just in that scenario, though, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough to get Brandon Miller in this situation, Cade's obviously going to be your point guard. Ivy will be the 2 guard, and Brandon Miller will probably be your 3. I just think, to me, that's just a match made in heaven. We had a text chain this past week. I was just telling you, I was like, man, this kid he's got something about him where I think more Pistons fans are going to fall in love with him the more they watch. And we have March Madness coming up soon. So we'll see when the lights are shining the brightest if he's either going to be a clutch player or he's going to shrink.
I can't wait. I really can't. You've been talking up Brandon Miller a lot, and a lot of the people that have been watching the YouTube have been talking Brandon Miller up. So you guys might be swaying my decision on who I would like in the draft. But let's talk about Isaiah Stewart here for a minute, because he's also been coming off the bench the last 2 games. I don't think it's because of injury, though, because he sat out the 23rd, but he played the 26th. So that's only 3 days of rest. So I don't think you can blame it on the injury. Maybe I'm wrong. But in his last 2 games off the bench, he's had 17 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, 7 fouls, 6 of 12 from the field, 0 for 1 from the 3, and 5 for 5 from the free throw line. Do you think the Pistons are done with the 2 big lineup between Isaiah Stewart and Duren?
I don't think they're done. It's just, unless you have a wing defender that can kind of mask the defensive issues that we have, it's going to be hard to have all 3 of them out there. I mean, like, you have Bojan some nights playing the 4, sometimes he plays the 3, but I mean, unless you get a wing defender that can really complement Stewart and Duren, I don't think you may see it sometime this year again, but I think what they're just doing is just experimenting with different lineups, because why not? They have nothing to lose. I mean, Casey's probably getting really creative with all these lineups. I mean, we could probably, see another lineup change. We don't know. I just think Casey's at the point of the season where he's just, playing with lineups and seeing what works and what doesn't.
But you don't think, like, I know we were talking, I was kind of pushing this on you a lot with the Killian Hayes talk just a moment ago, but you don't think that some of these moves of moving these players to the bench, that, again, I'm going to ask you, but you don't think it's just a move towards the future? Like, they want to see how these guys play in these roles?
No, I don't even think that. I don't. I think, to my point, I think it was just kind of like a wake-up call for a lot of those guys. Like, Isaiah Stewart has started almost every game this year. And I don't know if they're trying to blame him for the Bucks' loss, but, I mean, Giannis is Giannis, right?
True.
Chris Middleton. I mean, they were NBA champions a few seasons ago for a reason. I mean, when those guys are healthy and they're playing, there's not too many teams in the NBA that can stop them. So I think it was more of just like a wake-up call, send a message to the locker room saying, like, this kind of effort isn't acceptable. I don't care if you started all year or not. You're coming off the bench. It's kind of like a discipline thing. Like, we're talking about Hamidou Diallo earlier. Hamidou Diallo didn't play for like damn near a month. He started getting garbage time maybe the last, I don't know, a month and a half ago or so. And then he started getting a longer leash. And then Casey started giving him more playing time. I think that's just the type of coach Casey is you got to earn your minutes. And if you're not going to earn your minutes, then you're going to the bench.
I like that, though. I like that approach by a coach. Don't give them anything, make them earn it. That's what I like. But I've also loved the move for Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench. Like we've talked about this before. He can be a very high, like, he plays with a lot of energy. And I think he's the type of guy that you would probably see some better games with him picking apart second units, because he does play with so much energy, and he is very skilled. Like, I'm not going to lose that part. It's not just he's not just Kenneth Faried, where he's relying on that athleticism. Isaiah Stewart is a very skilled player, great footwork, good touch around the rim, developed that 3-point shot, can beat a few guys off the dribble. I just think his game is really, he's starting to make it like he could be a real valuable bench piece. And I think this move isn't just, hey, I just want to shake things up for now, but I do think we're getting kind of a look towards the future. Now, a new coach might think differently, but I think that Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes, they're going to make their marks on this league as role players off the bench. And the Pistons are quietly building something in Detroit. And, Isaiah Stewart, Killian, whether they're starting or off the bench, they're going to have a future in that. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a previous podcast that, like, I told you, I was just like, the Pistons are really good at drafting role players.
Yep.
Like, they're really good at drafting role players. I mean, you look at the Detroit Clippers out there. I mean, they have Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris. Even though Reggie is a starter, I think he grew up a lot with the Clippers, but I think the Clippers would probably tell you they want a point guard that's better.
Yep.
Like they do. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we see Kyle Lowry in a Clippers uniform by the deadline. It just wouldn't surprise me, at the least, because they want to upgrade that position. But the Clippers are just, they looked for role players and they went to the Detroit Pistons. Like our only building blocks, in my personal opinion, are like Cade, Ivy, and Duran. Those will be your starters probably for the next 5 to 10 years, depending on how contracts go. I think those are 3 building blocks that you can build around.
Definitely. Let's talk about this. You sent me something earlier today. It was on DeLon Wright. You kind of want to break that down for our people watching?
Yeah, hold on. Let me grab my phone real quick. I can kind of read you guys this. I was just like, I haven't heard that name probably since like the COVID year in 2020. And I was like, I've not heard DeLon Wright's name in a long time. So essentially it was I think it was an article from Hoops Hype, and they were talking about DeLon Wright. And DeLon Wright was actually shocked by the trade. When we traded him to Sacramento, I think for Corey Joseph, I believe it was.
Yep.
And he said, this is the quote. It's like the first time he was traded from Toronto to Memphis, Wright says the desire was mutual. The Pistons trade was the most surprising to him. He said they were interested in me for years, and they finally signed me, and I was only there for 36 games, and they trade me. So, I mean, like, I guess, like, some players, I shouldn't say some players. You hear it from players all the time, like, they don't find out they get traded unless it's, like, from, maybe it's their spouse, maybe it's, they see it on SportsCenter or what. He was very shocked that he got traded because he's right. The Pistons had interest in him for, like, multiple years, and they could just never get a deal done, but that was under a different regime. That was the Van Gundy regime that really liked DeLon Wright. It wasn't, the Troy Weaver regime. Obviously, they signed him because there are still people that work for the Van Gundy regime that work in the front office still. And obviously, they kind of persuaded Troy to like, hey, if it works, cool. If it doesn't, we can flip him. So I think I've kind of found that funny, but I mean,
dude, it's super funny. Like they only played him for 36 games and he was averaging 10, 5 and 5 with almost 2 steals per game. I didn't think that trade made any sense when they let go of DeLon Wright. It's hard to hate on a role player, but like I thought DeLon Wright was playing really well in Detroit. And I kind of thought like this was another one of those guys where he's starting because out of necessity they need him to start. But this is a dude that could still contribute down the line when the team gets better. So I was a little disappointed. I was actually disappointed when they traded DeLon Wright for Corey Joseph. I hated that trade at the time. I wish they didn't do it. Even with everything we know now, with Cade coming in and Ivy and Duran, it all makes sense. But, man, DeLon Wright is one of those guys that I wish his tenure was a little longer in Detroit. Because I was even a big fan of his when he got drafted originally. Like, I really liked DeLon Wright when he first got drafted. And I was super stoked to have him in Detroit, even if it was just 36 games.
Yeah, it's just – I don't know. I was never really a fan of his. I thought his time in Detroit was – he was basically just a babysitter for Killian when he was out there. Yeah. They would play 2-guard lineups with him and Killian. Because Casey didn't want to give him the leash. I mean, he did that with Corey Joseph a little bit, but thought that was kind of funny that he did mention that he was shocked that Detroit did trade him. But
don't you think it's kind of funny though that we're getting like all of these random Detroit stories over the last couple of years? Like they're promising guys they're going to draft them. They, all this other stuff. It's like Detroit's kind of a dirty team sometimes.
We're the ultimate dick tease, I guess.
Dude, that's a great way of saying it.
Honestly, man, it's funny.
Let's get into this Pistons talk. Player of the win. We had 1 win last week. We were right, 1-2 for the season. Just got the game wrong. The win came over the Brooklyn Nets, 130-122. By the way, Kyrie Irving is averaging a career high in blocks per game this season at 0.8. He has 29 blocks on the season. His highest is 34. And we're about halfway through the season. So I don't know what is going on with Kyrie Irving, but he's just become a defensive monster in Brooklyn.
Yeah. I think once, all the dust settled with the media and, him watching the documentary, I think he was able to play ball, and I think that's why Brooklyn has been so good lately. Kyrie, you got to give Nick Claxton some love too. I mean, he's low key probably going to be a finalist for the Defensive Player of the Year. Like Nick Claxton has put together a really good, solid month and a half of basketball where he's just playing so well. Brooklyn has some good players on their roster too.
Yeah, Nick Claxton, though, his footwork is incredible when he is switching to. Like, that is a guy, if you're a young big man and you're trying to make a name or just trying to get a contract in the NBA, he's a guy you want to watch just in how he stays in front of guys when they switch. Like, yeah, Nick Claxton, he's a baller, man. But who's your player of the win?
I have to give it to Sadiq because I felt like he had such a great game. I want to give it to Ivy, but I got to give it to Sadiq. He had a really efficient game, 25 points off the bench. Just played a really good, complete basketball game.
Yeah, I'm debating between Ivy and Killian just because I want to be a little different. Ivy, he had that surge in the first quarter. He finished with 16 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds, I believe a block and a steal. So he did it on both ends as well. But Killian Hayes came off the bench. He hasn't came off the bench in a while. He had 16 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, but he also closed the game. He was playing pretty well in that game. I'm going to go Ivy, though, just because I felt like that first quarter in the way he was scoring the ball and what he was doing against Brooklyn, it set the tone. So I got to give it to Ivy just for being the tone setter in that game. Because I think without the way he played, that's not a win for Detroit.
No, I think you're right, too. Like I said, they think there was, 8 players in double figures. That's how well they were playing. So, shout out to the Pistons for beating the Nets. I mean, the Nets have been playing really good basketball lately. I know they were without Seth Curry, who's a very lethal three-point shooter, but still, to beat a team that's one of the hottest teams in the NBA and a top seed in the Eastern Conference, I think I would put this win up there with the Warriors win earlier this year. I still think those are probably the 2 best basketball games I've watched all season by the Pistons.
Definitely, just a complete game. And you are right. They had 8 guys in double figures that night. No, yeah, Isaiah Livers, my boy, only had 2 points, but played 23 minutes.
Had a great dunk last night, though.
Oh, yeah, that windmill dunk? Yeah, that was incredible. I've just been saying windmill dunks because I'm going to miss George Blaha when he's gone.
He ain't going anywhere.
Well, not for a while, but one day he'll be gone. Let's look ahead at this week's slate of games. We have 4 games coming up. We have Pistons at Dallas on Monday night, 8:30. We have Wizards at Pistons. That's on Wednesday. We have Hornets at Pistons on Friday. Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch that game because I will be broadcasting a game. And then on Saturday, we have Suns at Pistons. So we got a pretty good slate of games here. What game are you looking forward to watching the most, and what do you think their record is this week?
I think they'll go 1-4.
Ooh. Okay.
Or the 1-3. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said 1-4. I think they'll beat the Suns.
Ooh, why do you think they'll beat the Suns? What's your thought process with that game?
Chris Paul, I think that there's a lot of rumblings with him that they're looking for his replacement. And if I was CP3, man, I'd kind of feel some type of way.
Yeah.
Like them calling about Terry Rozier and other guards like Fred VanVleet. I think the Pistons have always played the Phoenix Suns really well. But they almost beat them last time they played them. I think that's a team that they could beat. I don't know if Luka will be back for the Mavs game. If not, that could be a game they could win too. But I mean, Jason Kidd's a very good coach, and I'm sure he'll bring it because they're trying to be a top seed in the Western Conference. But I would probably say the Suns game is the one that I'll be looking out for the most. I don't know. Maybe we can beat Charlotte. I don't know if LaMelo's healthy. I don't know if he's playing or not.
No, I mean, man, he almost put himself on the IR permanently with that way he pulled out in his new car. Jeez. Yeah. That was just seriously, dude, who pulls out when someone's driving? That's just crazy.
That's not the first time I've seen him do that either.
Yeah, I just dude, I'm not trying to be a jerk or be dark about that at all either. Just people think we're in tanks when we drive cars. They're really like aluminum cans. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say the Pistons go 2-2.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think they could beat the Suns because for some reason they do play the Suns really well. I don't know why that is. And then I'm going to go ahead and say they beat the Hornets as well because I know they're without some guys. I don't think LaMelo's going to play in this game. And Mark Williams, just not really doing much, but he did have kind of a game. Did you see, by the way, just not trying to throw him under the bus, but I just did. I apologize. Mason Plumlee, they're looking for a first-round pick. He's having a career year. He's averaging 12, 10, and 4 for the Charlotte Hornets right now while shooting left-handed. I just wanted to give a shout-out to Mason Plumlee. Yeah, I even think without Luka, I know the Pistons have a chance, but you're right. Jason Kidd is a good coach. And Christian Wood will probably have some animosity and probably want to go hard against Detroit that game. So I don't think they beat the Mavericks. The Wizards, I don't know. I just always feel like they have the Pistons numbers for some reason in that when they play and the Pistons never have a chance. Hornets, that's winnable without LaMelo. And then Phoenix, just like you said, there's just something about the way Detroit plays against Phoenix. And they have some issues going on internally with Chris Paul. So I'll go ahead and say they go 2-2 this week.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they went 2-2. It just, I don't know. After seeing that tanking masterclass against the Rockets, my confidence isn't too high.
God, that sucked. I thought they were going to beat the Houston Rockets. They should have beat the Houston Rockets. They were down so much, man. I mean, they were down out so many players.
You lose to Houston without Sengun and Jalen Green.
I know, man. I know. And it was crazy. And that was the matchup I wanted to see. I wanted to see Sengun and Duren and Isaiah Stewart. I wanted to see those three just battle it out, and we didn't get it. Get it. It sucked. Do we have any Q&A questions?
We do, but I got to go to the bathroom real quick, and then I'll answer them. I'll leave you with this one because it is a Q&A question. This is for you. Ben says, Lance on the Brandon Miller train. Don't let him slide.
They talk about me. Don't let
you want to react to that?
You're just going to watch my face watching Brandon Miller highlights. Lance on the Brandon Miller train. Don't let him slide. What does the PT mean? No, I'm getting, I don't know. Jabari Smith, though, I was right about him. I didn't think he was going to be very good. And for some reason, when I think of Brandon Miller, I get nervous because I think of Jabari Smith. But I don't know. Brandon Miller, he might be the guy. What do you guys love about him, though? Like that's. I think I've asked this before, but I want to know. What do you guys love about Brandon Miller? Why do you think he fits in Detroit? Just educate me, because I'm high on Keontae George. That's kind of my guy. And me and Anthony, we were talking earlier in the week because we were talking about Brandon Miller and some of the other prospects, and I was talking about Keontae George, and I can't remember the website I found, but they had kind of compared him to Dwayne Wade. And then when I was sending some of these articles and comparisons to Anthony, Keontae George was compared to Rodney Stuckey, which we thought was interesting.
Yeah, I do remember you weren't too high on Brandon Miller like a month ago.
Yeah. Oh, even a week.
Yeah. I said, dude, you got to watch some more on him. Like, don't let the highlights fool you. There's something there.
But I mean, are people comparing him to Jabari Smith? That's all I need to know.
No, I don't even think they're similar. I think Brandon Miller has more of a handle and he can get to the basket. He's got separation and he's a really good 3-point shooter. And I think that's exactly what you need at a 3 right now. Even though like we kind of have Sadiq was supposed to be that 3. Now you have Bojan. I think it'd be a really good fit with Cade too.
Yeah, I'm starting to, man. I'm still leaning towards Keontae George, even though I've already said we have so many guards now. But there's just something about guys like Keontae George, even though they're probably not the most skilled, like when it comes to drills, it just seems like they show up when the games are being played.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only on the Keontae George if like worst case scenario, because I think we're like at the second worst odds. If we're picking 6th, yeah, that's the guy that I look at, like him and Cam Whitmore. But like because I think we're like second worst record. I think the farthest you can fall is like the 6th overall pick. Like worst case scenario, you'd probably look at guys like Keontae George, Anthony Black, and guys like that. But
Yeah, and I'm not saying draft Keontae George with the 3rd pick. Like I definitely think there's some guys you would pick up over him, but
yeah,
I guess Brandon Miller, he's the prize.
yeah. I mean, some people think he can go high as 2.
I do you think so though? Do you think teams would draft him over Scoot Henderson?
I do, because if you kind of look at Scoot's numbers, they're not the greatest in the G League, and I think some, scouts. Now, this isn't me. This is like just what I've read in a lot of these articles from these scouts. They kind of are hand shy over the Jalen Green pick, because Jalen Green went second, and he didn't have the greatest year with the Ignite. And Scoot Henderson is kind of having a similar situation where, his shooting numbers aren't the greatest, but he's still a generational talent, in my opinion. I think if like the Spurs get him or the Magic get him, like, or even the Rockets, for example, I think the Rockets would be a really good fit, because I think he's just a guard that could like really help them, explode the rebuild, put them, back to winning games. But I don't think it's out of the question if you see Brandon Miller to 2 talks, because he just kind of has that all around game that you really like out of like a wing defender. And I think his defense is kind of slept on too. I think he's a pretty good defender.
Okay, again, I still gotta watch a little bit more of him, but you guys really are talking me into Brandon Miller, and you can just try to forget when I compared him to Jabari Smith, because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Jabari will be a good defender. I saw this earlier. It's not really a question, but this comes from Dean. He's talking about Bojan. He said, I saw a few rumors about the Pistons and Knicks with the Bojan and Detroit getting their first back. That would interest me, so that Weaver could do his wheeling and dealing again. So I feel like we could react to this comment, because I think some people forget that, New York does have our first. I think because of the Jalen Duren trade, if I do remember correctly. You guys can correct me if I am wrong in the comment section, if you guys are watching live on YouTube. But I don't know if I really want anything that New York has.
Not right now. I mean, I kind of like the Grimes kid. I like
Quinn Grimes.
Yeah, he's pretty solid. I'd have to look at the New York Knicks roster. I'm not big on. You've already heard me say I'm not big on Cam Reddish. Like I don't like that. I'd rather deal with the guys we have. Obi Toppin is an interesting piece, but even then, I don't love Obi Toppin on the Detroit Pistons. So outside of Grimes, and I mean, obviously there are other star players. Like if you're telling me Jalen Brunson or like RJ Barrett is available, or for Bojan, then I guess I would, that'd be pretty interesting as well. Who wouldn't do that? But yeah, there's not much on New York that I'm really in love with.
Yeah, I think if there's one player, it's maybe Julius Randle. And I don't really know if you would want a Julius Randle on this team. Not to say that he's not a good player. It's just we have so much front court depth right now. Like, I think Julius Randle's a great player. I do, but I'm not gonna trade with the Knicks just to get my first back, because I feel like Troy has proved that he can get first round picks, and just get draft capital just from his time being here as a GM for the Pistons.
So can you break this down for me? What pick is that? It's not this year's pick, or is this?
I gotta look. Let me go on Tankathon and it'll let me know what pick they have.
Because I feel like someone had mentioned something about this a few podcasts ago, but we didn't really dive too much into it.
Yeah, you know what? Tankathon won't even have it. Real GM might have it. Let me check real quick. I'm not 100% sure. It's so hard to just keep up with all of these trades that Troy does make, because it's just absolutely insane. So we want to go to the Knicks. Okay, we can just go to the Pistons. So so New York does own our pick. Okay. So I'll kind of break it down for you. So they own our pick 1 through 18.
Okay.
Oh, wait, that's not right. Okay, so we own our own pick 1 through 18, but New York would own it if it's between 19 and 30.
Okay. Interesting.
So this is I think this is part of the Isaiah Stewart trade, but that this pick has just been traded so much because I don't know if you remember, it was like, if it was so heavily protected. I can kind of break it down for you, just like how crazy it actually gets. So that's in 2023. So 2024, we own our own pick 1 through 18, but if we make the playoffs anywhere from 19 to 30, it would go to the Knicks if it's not settled already. 2025, it would be 14 through 30, 2026, 12 to 30, and then 2027, 10 to 30 if it's not settled. So that pick is so heavily protected, but we do own our pick. It's just if it falls in between that category, then it would go to the New York Knicks.
It's so crazy that you can do that with draft picks. Like, wow, I did not know you could do that. That just opened my eyes. That's crazy. That's
Yeah, I'll send you the link to Real GM, and you can kind of see the breakdown of like that trade that Troy didn't make. It's so heavily protected. Like, I don't even think the Pistons, like, maybe like you're in 2026 and it's like, top 12, like you should be competing for a championship by then.
Yeah, that is.
You should. I don't think I'm not really sweating that.
Oh my gosh, I did not know it was that heavily protected. That's crazy, man. That is.
Yeah, crazy. It went to OKC and then the Knicks have it. So I mean, Houston had it originally, so they've just kind of been trading it like around the league. This comes from Rod Love, 313. Shout out to Rod. So yes, if the Pistons trade Bojan, I would take a young long three like Zaire Williams from Memphis and their first this year. No, I did see a trade with that. And I like Zaire Williams, and I think Memphis, if I do remember correctly, they might have a couple of first-round picks. Let me check real quick. I don't know how you feel about that.
I like Zaire Williams, man. I like Zaire Williams. I like guys that, I mean, like he's shown some flashes, but just doesn't. He's on a team that's pretty good. Like there's a lot of guys ahead of him. I like Darius. Man, I'm just gonna say his name wrong. Blazley for Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. I like him as well too. I think those guys are pretty interesting. So, yeah, I would be happy with Zaire Williams, man. I really would. Just because you're also trading Bojan, so you're clearing up some room for him to actually get minutes in Detroit. That's what I love about that trade as well. If you can get a young player like that has shown some promise, he's only 21 years old and a first round pick, I think you have to pull the trigger on that trade.
Yeah, I believe shout out to Kyle Metz. I think he had a trade like this. He's been doing a lot of trade machine trades with it being trade deadline season. He had a trade that did involve Zaire Williams that I wouldn't hate. I mean, Memphis's pick as of right now is sitting at 26. So you're looking at a very late first round pick. It's so funny. I'm on Tankathon. You kind of look at this draft. So many trades have just like gone on, and like a lot of teams don't even own their first round pick. Like Indiana has 2 first round picks this year. So I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think too though, if you got a guy like Zaire Williams with the first pick, there would be some other moves coming with that first pick if you were to get it back. But yeah, I would love that trade for the Pistons. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Well, that, and I know the Pistons were really high on him too coming out of the draft. That was a guy that they had a lot of interest in. Okay, we got more Bojan talk. This comes from Bravo. Question: are you concerned about Bojan's value dropping by the trade deadline? Talker on the NBA mentioned that we would agree to trade him with a lower value by then.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned because I feel like they kind of missed the boat on trading Bojan. I think like his value has gone down. I think a couple weeks ago, his peak was when he was on a nice little run. His peak was at its highest, and I thought that was the time to trade him. If you were really trying to get him out of town. I don't think you're going to get 2 first-round picks for him at the deadline. I think you would be lucky to get 1. He is a very valuable player, but he's also 33 years old. And, I know that, the NBA playoff bracket is starting to kind of that picture is starting to be, filled out or painted. But there's still a lot of question marks around this season. Who knows? A team could trade for Bojan and they could not make a deep playoff run, or they could still be a play-in team. So I don't know. I just don't see Bojan getting – if he does get traded at the deadline, it's not going to be what we think he should have gotten a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I still think you can get a first for him. I do. I'm not really too concerned by it because if the Pistons were set on trading him, they wouldn't have given him that extension.
Yeah.
I think Troy set his price very high, and if he gets it, then he'll trade him. If he doesn't, he'll keep him. I think that's what you're seeing. I even saw a troll. I don't know if you saw this, but someone said that it wasn't a real report. They're like, yeah, Pistons want 2 first-round picks for Ronnie McGruder.
I saw that. That was awesome.
I got a good laugh out of it. I was like, bro, I love Pistons fans, man. It's just trolling people with the trade rumors this time of year.
Yeah, that was great. Man. Yeah, I don't know. I just think his value is lower. I just don't like. I mean, you could probably still get a first round pick for him, but 2, that's off the table, right?
Yeah, I doubt the Lakers give you their 2027 and 2029. I feel like if they were going to go after a player and offer those 2 first round picks, I think it would be like a guy like DeMar DeRozan would probably pique their interest. Like I saw this BS report that saying that the Bulls and the Lakers wanted to trade Zach LaVine for Russell Westbrook.
I saw that too.
And I was just like, they would have made the trade already. Like if that was a thing, they would have pulled the trigger on it. I was like, I think it was from Basketball Forever that had that reporting. I was like, no, there's no way that's true.
So let me ask you a question since we're on the topic of Bojan. Do you think fans are starting to turn on him just a little bit?
I don't think they're turning on him. I just think it's, trading deadline season and they see all these, fans out there with their trade machines and, trying to come up with the best Bojan trade package. I think that, there's not a whole lot that you could probably get for him in terms of like young assets, but I think you can get draft capital. If you want to get this draft picks, I think you can get draft picks for Bojan. I don't think you're going to get a young player and draft capital. I think it's one or the other.
Well, it's not the trades that are why I'm saying that I think people are putting on him. It's just some of the comments I'm seeing on during these games. I don't know if you're paying attention to them. I just see some people like, why is Bojan doing that? Wow, Bojan finally passed the ball. Dude, if I were Detroit, I would try to get rid of him right now because it's just laughable the way he's playing. I've seen tweets like that for Bojan, and I'm just thinking like, when have we ever had a Pistons player having a season like him shooting the ball? Like, even if he is waving guys off, like just enjoy what he's doing in Detroit, because there's not much to be excited about during this season.
Yeah, I mean, if the Pistons, let's just say they're like an 8 seed or a 7 seed, I don't really think you would hear the same kind of talk you hear on Twitter. But I think since the Pistons are still in a rebuilding phase, Pistons fans are just looking for an excuse to bitch. Honestly, I saw like why is Bojan taking the ball when Killian should be taking the ball up the court? Like,
I know,
it's like crazy. It's like you're gonna tell the vet, "Hey, give the ball to Killian." Like, it happens. Like, no team is perfect. Like, I don't do I want Bojan taking the ball up the court? No, but it happens. I mean, I remember Andre Drummond used to do that all the time, and he used to just piss people off. He used to take the ball up the court like he was a point guard and get freaking stripped every time.
But why do fans think they can just micromanage a basketball team? It's like, dude, things just happen. Bojan if you've played basketball, there's sometimes you just get a rebound and you see a lane, so you bring the ball up. Like you don't always just give it to your point guard. Like there are times in a basketball game where you're like, well, I have an opening, so I'm just going to take it. Like he's in the NBA. He's a very skilled player. He can bring the ball up if he wants. So
we have a follow-up question about kind of like a Knicks trade.
Okay.
This comes from SJ. He says, follow-up question about the Knicks mock trade. Are you going to trade Bogey plus Burks in return for Fournier, Reddish? Also, own a draft pick just to get rid of the contract of Fournier. No, I wouldn't do that trade just to get my draft pick back. I know, DJ was saying, you want to get your draft pick back because, Detroit can't move a first-round pick until 2029 because of the protections. I get that standpoint. But at the same time, that draft pick is so heavily protected. I don't think I would sweat it if I was the Pistons.
Yeah, I'm not doing that trade. Like I don't want Cam Reddish. I was a fan of Evan Fournier, before he went bald. So no, I'm good on that. And like you were saying, like we just went over this, the pick is very heavily protected, so I'm not really worried about it. So I would pass on that trade.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that Fournier is not a good player. He is, but I don't think I would want his contract on the books. You have to remember the Pistons are going to have a lot of cap space, and you're going to want to be aggressive this free agency to try to get players that can help you get into the playoffs and help you get into a plan next year. I don't really think Evan Fournier or a Cam Reddish can get you to that point.
So the last time he played was November 13th, and then he went a long stretch of games pretty much since that time until the end of 2022. And he played, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, he played 7 games, then went on another whole not active, then played a game, and now he's inactive, did not play. So I don't know what's going on with Evan Fournier. I mean, I'm willing to bet that to get him, if you were to trade for him, it wouldn't cost you very much, but I have to pass just because of the contract. And I don't know. He's not the same guy he was.
Yeah, I think it's more of a situation and a coaching thing too. I think it's a Thibodeau thing, and Thibodeau and the Knicks front office aren't on the same page, obviously.
Well, he's just also struggling putting the ball in the hole, man. Like shooting wise, it's been a bad year for him.
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't help that he doesn't get like consistent playing time either. I mean, you trade for Cam Reddish and then you don't even use him. I mean, I don't even know what's going on in New York. I could see them being big time sellers at the deadline.
Yeah. He started at the beginning of the season and then just struggled shooting the ball. He's never known to be a defensive player, just could not get things going, and he's fallen out of the rotation.
Yeah, it's sad to see. I mean, I thought Evan Fournier, when he was in Orlando, I mean, he used to kill the Pistons.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
He's an underrated 2 guard in Orlando.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he'd have even more French players to greet Victor when the Pistons draft him. I mean, but
okay, I tweeted something out about this last night, and I got no traction. So I'm just assuming Pistons fans hate me, but I said the Houston Rockets are I didn't say it just like this, but I said they're a terrible team. The Houston Rockets are a terrible team when a very tall, very skilled center is available in the draft. They've drafted Ralph Sampson and Yao Ming, and now Victor Wembanyama is headlining this draft. Did I just jinx us with that?
I got to find it, though. I got to find your tweet.
I hope I actually tweeted it out and didn't actually delete it and got scared.
Yeah, you didn't even get a like. Damn.
I know, right? And I was getting likes all night with my tweets. And that I tweeted that one out, and I thought I'd get like maybe a couple middle finger emojis or a bunch of Houston Rockets fans following me, but nothing.
You got to use those hashtags, Lance, if you want to get some traction. Got to use those Rocket hashtags to get them in your DMs.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, does that kind of make sense? Like, I think Houston, they have a thing for really tall, really skilled centers. And for some reason, these dudes seem to fall in their laps. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like that's a low-hanging fruit enough. I mean, if you would have said that, made like a strip club joke with Harden, then I think you would have got more traction.
Well, I didn't want to make a strip club joke with James Harden. I wanted to make a center tweet because I think I might be wrong about this, but I believe the Houston Rockets drafted another center that never came over. I think it was in the 70s or the 80s, another really tall center that never played in the NBA. But I could be wrong about that. But
I mean, I didn't even realize Bojan. I kept talking about Bojan all podcast. Boban is on the Rockets. I was just like, wow, I did not know Boban was still on the Rockets.
He's the only player that has no haters in the NBA.
Yeah, Boban is like literally like the nicest guy. Like I wish him and Tobias Harris were still together.
Man, that was a marriage that needed to last longer than it did.
Telling you, man, Toby and Bobby.
Cute kids, those two had. Cute kids.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions. Some people really want the Pistons to trade for the Knicks, but Why don't we wrap up the podcast? We've been up for an hour and a half almost on YouTube and Facebook. So we do appreciate you guys watching. Why don't you tell the people where they can find the podcast and how to support it?
Yeah, no, and I just really want to say thank you for everybody that is still listening to this podcast and watching us every week. And just we got our first review on Apple. I really appreciate whoever did that. Poetic Justice. You are awesome, man. Seriously, thank you. Those were really nice, kind words that you left on the podcast. So anyways, let me do this on this week's episode. I'm not going to say that. Here we are closing it out. I got to find where I wrote this down at. Even though I say it every week, you think I would have it memorized. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
See you guys next week. Should be good.